world is divided into two hemispheres, North and South. But did you know that they differ not just in geography but also in wealth, industry, politics, and history? When we think about the world's richest and most powerful countries, they are almost always in the northern hemisphere. Meanwhile, the southern hemisphere is often associated with developing economies and emerging nations. Why is that? And how do these differences shape the world today? In this video, we'll explore what makes the northern and southern hemispheres different from economy and politics to their roles in globalization. Let's start with the most obvious difference, wealth and industry. The Northern Hemisphere is home to the world's richest and most industrialized countries, like the United States, Canada, Europe, and Japan. These nations have highly developed economies, strong industries, and advanced technology. Meanwhile, the Southern Hemisphere includes developing nations such as those in Africa, South America, and parts of Asia. These economies rely more on agriculture, mining, and raw material exports than high tech manufacturing. Even though the global south has an abundance of natural resources, it does not generate as much wealth as the north. That's because the north controls most of the global industries. About 90% of manufacturing and technological advancements come from the north. This means that while the south provides resources, the north turns them into products which are then sold at a much higher price. The way countries are governed also plays a huge role in their development. Most Northern Hemisphere countries are stable democracies with capitalist economies, allowing for higher wages, better education, and access to healthcare. In contrast, many Southern Hemisphere countries have weaker governments or non democratic leadership. Some have unstable democracies, while others are ruled by authoritarian regimes. This often leads to corruption, economic struggles, and slower progress. Because of these differences, northern nations have more power on the global stage, making key decisions in international organizations like the United Nations, World Bank, and IMF. Meanwhile, many southern nations have to follow policies created by these northern powers. One of the biggest reasons for these differences is history. Many southern hemisphere countries were colonized by northern powers. For centuries, their economies were designed to serve the interests of the foreign rulers rather than develop independently. Even after gaining independence, many southern nations continue to struggle with debt, economic dependence, and weak infrastructure. On the other hand, the North benefited from industrialization and early economic growth, allowing it to stay ahead. So, while the Northern and Southern hemispheres share the same planet, they live very different realities, shaped by economics, politics, history, and geography. What do you think is the biggest difference between the two? Do you think the gap will ever close?